is we wanted to measure the children's level of hope, rape, murder, deforestation, war, crime, famine, inhumane behavior. You hear all of these terrible things, and we're going to run the biggest study of levels of hope in children ever recorded on the planet, and those results will come out at the end of this year.
Right now on top of my mind, and it's been disturbing me, to be very candid. I am part of a selection committee of sorts, which is working with an NGO in India. And what that NGO does is it provides scholarship to postgraduate students, specifically pursuing different degrees. And me and one of the other selection committee member, we were typically doing interviews with the students and with the aspiring students who have applied for the scholarship. They've been through a variety of rounds, and there are thousands of students who apply, and through various selection process these students show up for the interview. Let me tell you, Gavin, it was a sorry state. Why I mean by sorry state is a lot of these students, they felt that, hey, we are doing engineering, we are doing data and AI, then we should get scholarship. Versus in my previous years, when I have done the similar process, they've many of the students have participated in community, giving back to community and aligning them. But today, that was a sorry state. Out of the four we took, and there are many more to go, we could only find one light of hope in one of them. The other three were like, robots of more of sorts. So to your point about values being lost, there are many things else getting lost in education, and would love to pick your brain. Why is that happening?
Well, it's so interesting you should say that. And it sounds as if we've prepared this. We haven't, just so your listeners know, this is not a question we've prepared. It's just come up organically. But you mentioned
Yeah.
hope. You mentioned hope. And so I've recently started working with Dr. Jason Skews, who is one of the world leading educational psychologists. And I have a course that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's called Be the Change. And this course is
Hmm.
children choose an SDG, one of the SDGs from the
Okay.
United Nations. Then they work in their groups or in their class or individually or independently, and they try to achieve some specific real world learning activities to tick off the SDG, to say SDG number 3 is important to me. I did this thing in my
Hmm.
community, and this is my achievement. So I started working with Dr. Jason Skews, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to measure the children's level of hope. Okay, and so what we did, we got a group of girls, 17-year-old girls from Sydney in one of the local schools here, and we did a pre-test on these girls to see how hopeful they were about the future and how determined they were to be able to change it. And it's called the Hope Scale. There's 23 questions in the Hope Scale. And when you answer these
Hmm.
questions, you can tell how hopeful you are. Now, what's
Okay.
interesting about hope in the world right now is levels of hope are really, really low. And if you
Yeah.
imagine why, and if after my discussions with Jason and other experts, we found out that because we're exposed to so much news now, it's everywhere. There's wars, there's famine, there's deforestation, there's climate change, the oceans are being polluted. Everything seems to be happening. If you are 10 years old to 16 years old and you're sitting in the back of your car in the morning on the way to school with your father or mother, and they've got the news on the car radio, you imagine as you're driving there every day for 200 days a year, what do you hear? Rape, murder, deforestation, war, crime, famine, inhumane behavior. You hear all of these terrible things. And then we're saying to the children in our school, okay, guys, when you finish school, you get to head out there into the big wide world. You're going to have a lot of fun. And they're like, oh my goodness, it doesn't sound like fun. It sounds awful out there in the world. So, what we want to do in this study, and it'll be the first of its kind, we actually want to see the levels of hope in the children before and after taking on some real world learning where they actually get to play a part in changing the world. Now, the first study is with a small cohort of students, only 20. The second
Yep.
one, which I'm doing with Dr. Snail Pinto, who you may know, she's the owner of Ryan Schools. She's
Yep.
enrolled 50,000 children onto one of my courses.
Wow.
and we're going to run the biggest study of levels of hope in children ever recorded on the planet. And those results will come out at the end of this year. And what we're hoping to see is that when people like Dr. Snell Pinto take on courses that I design that think about real world learning and children taking action, and they're not qualified about, they're not measured on, grades, points, scores, they're measured on impact. What happens to the level of hope in children, and what happens to their determination to want to make it better? And we hope, for want of a better word, we hope that their levels of hope increase. And therefore, that will say to the world, all the educationalists around the planet, if you want your children to walk out of your schools with a better well-being and mindfulness around how the world is looking, then you need to give them learning that looks something like this. So it's very important. But, I don't want to be doom and gloom. But unfortunately, when our focus is on grades, points, scores, percentages, rankings, the PISA scale, all these things, we focus on the wrong things. We do not develop students who can go out there and survive and thrive in this world. We just don't. We provide them with the metrics of success that say, if you achieve top scores, you will do well. And, that is not actually the truth at all.
So just building on, and there are so many things which you've said, and I would love to double click on each one of them. But before we go ahead, the study which you conducted on 20 students, how did that fare? When the students, the pre and the post, what marked difference did
Well,
you
we've
see?
only done the pre-test at the moment.
Yeah.
The children
Oh,
right now are doing the work, and in
okay.
5 weeks' time, we will do the post. And so I will feed back to you. Maybe I can come back on your podcast again and tell you exactly
Sure.
what happened. And the idea is, I do so many keynote speeches at so many conferences that instead of going along with anecdotal evidence, which is what I normally do, I say, we did this with these kids and this thing happened. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to be going with, we did this thing with these children, and here is the science behind what happened in their brain, in their neuroplasticity, in their hope for the future. Because anecdotal evidence is very good and it gets you emotion. Your emotions are pulled when you learn that some children planted a forest, or, they renovated some land or saved the biodiversity. But when you know that real white paper studies have been written about this and it's based on something that you put together, then people take note. And when you've got someone like Dr. Jason Skews and you've got Dr. Snell Pinto coming along to these kind of studies, then you can really make big shifts in education around the world. Ryan Schools has 250,000 kids in their school, 250,000. So, if it works in Ryan Schools, it will literally work everywhere.
I hope you enjoyed this clip from my podcast series called Masters Decoded. The intention of bringing these clips to you is to allow you to understand some key moments of the conversations I've had with my guest. I would recommend and highly encourage you to listen to the entire podcast, which you can find the link to the podcast in the description below. I look forward to you subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified of all the future clips which we keep releasing every week on this channel.